Um, and basically, I want the BD team's setting a lot of things up. It's great. There are some technical compatibility constraints that I want to make sure the BD team's aware of, and just generally, I want to align the BD team more with the product. I think it's also, if we get some time, great to hear a bit of feedback from the BD team about the channels they're in and what information is coming back from what's going out. So you guys have all seen the demo on Monday. So as a very quick summary, we have this Tonomy ID smart wallet that lets you sign in to multiple apps in a highly secure way. It manages the private keys and personal information directly in the app. It doesn't store them on a server. The way we do that is we run an Antelope blockchain network. So it's running the Antelope protocol. And on that blockchain, we store cryptographic information about each account. So we store a hash of the username, and we store the public keys and a little bit of other metadata. What this means is because they have an account on that blockchain, those accounts can sign transactions on smart contracts on that particular blockchain. It also means that they can use the private keys that are associated with the public keys that are on the blockchain, and they can sign data with that, and anybody can go to the blockchain and verify that the public keys are associated with the account. So the blockchain is the single source of truth of the public keys. And then what is signed can be verified anywhere, but the blockchain is still a single source of truth of those public keys. So I think there's basically a constraint we have is that we are running an Antelope protocol blockchain. And that means if somebody wants us to integrate with another protocol blockchain, this is just not something we can do at the moment. It's not part of the MVP.
Is Antelope a programming language, or what does it mean?
Antelope is a blockchain protocol. It's a protocol for the consensus of the blockchain network.
Oh, okay.
So
And this is currently used by a couple of different major public blockchains, and then a bunch of private ones.
Let me translate, if that's okay. So we have the ability to deploy a network that allows us to share amongst a company network or security guarantees about people on the network, like who is that and who is this person, and as well as information. How was that information created, who created the information, etc. And what Jack just told us is that the network that we deploy is only able to, if it's a similar program that works in a similar fashion that also deploys a network like that, it needs to be an EOS type network. If it's not, it can't work with it. That's what Jack is saying, correct?
Correct. EOS is one of the public blockchains that uses the Antelope protocol. So there's kind of two options. One is that for whichever client we go for, we would deploy and run an Antelope blockchain network for them. The other is that they already have an Antelope blockchain, and this would apply if we want to sell this to EOS or Wax or Newcoin or something like this, who already have a running Antelope blockchain network.
Yes, so what this means is that For Web 3.0 clients, we can only target EOS affiliated systems, maybe Ethereum affiliated systems, but nothing else. And if they don't use Web 3.0, don't use a blockchain, then this does not matter. Then the only thing that it needs is the ability to read JSON messages from the VCs and the DoD.
Yeah.
Correct?
That's right. So there's two features that you can kind of do once you log in. You can sign a blockchain transaction. Then you would be signing a blockchain transaction on the Antelope network that we deploy or the one that they already have. You can't sign a blockchain transaction on a different network. You can't use Tonomy ID to sign a transaction on the Ethereum network or on Bitcoin, for example. The other feature is to sign a piece of verifiable data called a verifiable credential. And basically, you can, the verifiable credential is more or less abstracted away from the blockchain, but you still need to run that blockchain to make it work. So it's a requirement, but once you've made these VCs, you can then send them around different systems that maybe don't have to run the Antelope blockchain network themselves. They would still use the Antelope blockchain network as a single source of truth to verify the VCs, but they don't need to have it in their system.
Something that I'm curious about is because often a concern with blockchain is that it costs a lot of like energy, right? Or that it's like difficult to scale. But with Tonomy, it's not really an issue, right? I heard we can like have a lot of transactions and a lot of like users using this at the same time. So how is that possible? I'm curious.
It's a really good question, and basically you've answered your own question. Scalability is not an issue. We can stretch out right now to scale vertically to about 1 billion users. And it can handle a lot of transactions at once. That said, you don't even need to do transactions to send VCs around. So you do need it to sign smart contracts. But if you're talking about sending VCs, you don't need transactions every time. The other thing is the energy consumption. And basically, we do not use the same. Antelope protocol does not use the same consensus mechanism as Bitcoin, so it is energy efficient.
So
Bitcoin is not, ours is.
Is it not proof of work then, but proof of stake?
Correct. It's not proof of work. So
but it's still secure.
It's still secure, but it's not proof of work. I don't know what the numbers are. It would take 100 or maybe 1,000 of the energy of Bitcoin. I don't know what those mean. Shouldn't quote me on that. It's way not in the same category as Bitcoin.
It's good for Samin to know and for Bilal listening to this, hopefully. The reason, what the trade-off is of that, the trade-off is our users are not anonymous. So, or there's an assumption that our users are not anonymous. In Bitcoin protocol, it's completely anonymous.
Our users are just as anonymous as Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Sorry?
Our users are just as anonymous as Bitcoin and Ethereum. That is not a trade-off we've made.
Okay, so what's the trade-off then, if that's not true?
For the consensus?
Yeah, there should be. There's no gain without loss.
That's not true.
So may I ask what consensus mechanism is applied then?
Yeah, so the pure Antelope protocol, this is going to lead me into the deeper point I wanted to make about Antelope compatibility. The pure Antelope protocol uses what's called an asynchronous Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus mechanism, and it, as a summary, it sets up rounds of block production, and it says, this is the schedule. Block producer 1 will make the first 10 blocks. Block producer 2 will make the next 10 blocks. And we have 20 rounds, okay? 20 block producers, and that's one round. And there is a mechanism for deciding who is in that schedule. So who will be the 20 people that produce blocks, or 20 entities. And then once the schedule is set, those produce blocks until it is changed. So that schedule can change over time. And the way the block producers are set is done in a smart contract that you can program. And so that means it's an on-chain governance mechanism. And you can actually program how the block producers are set. You can say the block producers are set by democratic vote, or the block producers are set by whoever has the most money. That would then be proof of stake. Or the block producers are set by the amount of votes that you get from the tokens that are on this chain. That's called delegated proof of stake. So on Antelope, it's quite special in that the governance of the consensus is done on chain, and therefore you can have quite different consensus mechanisms on different Antelope chains. Does this make sense? Could maybe somebody translate this?
Yeah, I think I understand, more or less. Also,
so
I think
the base, the default configuration is, it's something called proof of authority, which is when the chain starts, you choose a set of, I don't know, 5 or 10 or 20, however many you want, block producers that run the network. And then they get the authority to choose if they want to change that set. That's the default configuration. That's the one we're using at Tonomy. But you can change a smart contract that's running on the blockchain that changes those rules. And there's a rule that's quite popular, which is whoever has tokens on the chain can vote for who should be in that set based on the number of tokens they have. So this is what they use on the EOS blockchain. If I have 10 EOS, I can use those 10 EOS to vote for who I think should be the block producer. Somebody else might have 10,000 EOS, and they have a much stronger vote on who should be the block producers. And whoever gets the most votes, counted in the number of EOS voted, becomes the block producer. That's called delegated proof of stake. Another thing you can do is just say whoever has the most tokens. So for example, whoever has the most EOS becomes the block producer. That's called proof of stake. That's what Ethereum is now doing. So all three consensus mechanisms are possible on the Antelope protocol without having to fork the rules or anything. That's something that makes it quite special compared to other protocols, in which if you want to make a different consensus mechanism, you actually have to go and change the software and make a new protocol. With Antelope, you don't have to do that. The rules for who's in the set are in a smart contract, and you can change that for each chain, and you can even change that over time. So I just gave 3 examples of proof of authority. The current set chooses who the next set would be. Proof of stake, whoever has the most tokens becomes the set. And then delegated proof of stake is whoever has tokens votes with their tokens on who should be in the set of block producers. Does anyone have any questions about that?
is it? I assume it's much cheaper to run this than Bitcoin, for example. But are there costs with running it? Or like,
yeah, so at the end of the day, there is a network of operators that run servers. So each block producer needs to run a pretty powerful server to make this happen. Because it has such high scalability and throughput, sometimes these servers need to have a lot of RAM and a lot of network bandwidth to make them run. On a fresh chain that nobody's using, you could probably get away with running a Docker container and it'd be fine. on networks like Wax. I think Wax is the most used blockchain in the world at the moment in terms of transaction throughput. And they're running, each node is running like 128 gigabytes of RAM and then 12 CPUs on a bare metal server that's probably costing 300 euros a month to run. So there are costs. And then there's 21 of those in the Wax blockchain. So there is a cost to run the network, and that is accounted for in the resource model. So the transaction fees and other things. So this brings me on to my next point. Each Antelope chain, even though they run the same protocol, is slightly different, both in terms of the consensus protocol and the resource model that they use to pay for the resources of those servers. And the most popular public chain model is delegated proof of stake, what I just explained. And what we currently have with the MVP is we're using the default model, which is the simplest, which is the proof of authority. What this means is that the MVP is not fully compatible with every Antelope chain out there, because every Antelope chain can customize its resource model and governance model just through smart contracts on that chain. So the final result is, even though we have an Antelope blockchain, it doesn't necessarily mean we can immediately integrate with every Antelope chain out there. If we wanted to launch Tonomy ID on the EOS blockchain, we would need to do some integration work to make ourselves compatible with them. And it would depend on what other clients have. If they already have an Antelope chain, we would need to assess our compatibility with them to be able to integrate. And the idea with the product is to make slight modifications per chain in the form of plugins to make that happen. This is the reason. I'm going to show you something. So we just wrote a proposal to the EOS Network Foundation to deploy Tonomy ID on the EOS blockchain network. I'm going to share my screen for a second. Where is it here? This proposal here, you can see this. Can you guys see this?
Yes, I can see this.
Okay. So part of this proposal is, a whole pitch about why they should have EOS ID, blah, blah, blah. Now, an important point for you guys to understand here is that part of the development roadmap to deploy to deploy Tonomy ID on EOS, and we're going to call it EOS ID, is that the first milestone as part of our deployment for them is to integrate with the EOS infrastructure, and we need to make sure that we are compatible with their consensus mechanism and resource model to be able to do this. And this is some work. So EOS would be an amazing client of ours, basically, to have. But there's work to do here. And I think this is a discussion I want to have is just about this compatibility thing and understanding that. And then because we have this grant here, we aren't on EOS yet, but we can talk to EOS app providers and offer EOS ID to them, and they can help us get on EOS ID by supporting this grant proposal. They can give a thumbs up to this grant, which is a pull request on GitHub.
I'm very happy that you brought this up, because this then needs to be into the standard bit of us to ecosystems like EOS. It's something that they can give us. for free, right? That doesn't cost them anything.
What do you mean it doesn't cost them anything, Chris? One second. I'll be back in 30 seconds, okay?
Sure.
You there?
Yes, I am here. I was waiting.
Yeah.
So
Go
what
ahead.
what I said is, if we talk to EOS or if we go EOS client, we should mention, hey, we're going to probably do the EOS idea. In order to make this available for you as well, please give us a thumbs up. It's a different proposal than buy our software.
Yeah.
And it's something that they can give relatively easy. And I don't know if it costs anything, but if it's free, yeah, that's an easy proposition, right? Hey, give us a thumbs up so that we can get the grant to build this for you.
Yeah, that's correct. So for an EOS app, they really can't use our product unless we're on EOS. Our client at this stage, with what we're offering, would be the EOS network itself, its community, and its governance.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
currently the EOS Network Foundation.
Exactly.
So the grant is really a proposal for us to be, in a way, their client. And if they accept this, we could then be a provider of services to the EOS app community. It's important to note here that if we deploy an EOS, it means we are not able to support WAX apps, right? WAX is another Antelope chain, or Telos apps. Telos is a different Antelope chain.
Why not?
Because this is deployed on the EOS blockchain, not on the Telos blockchain, and not on the WAX blockchain if we do this. Like I just said, each Antelope chain is separate and distinct.
And even if they both have their own version of our identity system, they can talk to each other?
They can exchange verifiable credentials between a WAX ID account and an EOS ID account. That is possible. But you can't sign a WAX smart contract with an EOS ID account.
Unless we make like a bridge that you can hold two accounts in one identity.
Yes, but let's not think about that. That's not part of the MVP.
Right.
So I'm curious, like, it seems to me that applying Tonomy ID in Web3 systems, we have quite some limitations, right, to the Antelope system in there. Doesn't it then make more sense to target Web2 companies if it's much easier to apply there?
I don't know, yes and no. There's like two different parts of Web3. There's the people are focused on right now. There's the being able to use tokens and smart contracts and NFTs. And then there's the broader ecosystem of just using blockchain, which is just signing transactions. And in this sphere, we can provide a service, and there are some limitations, but for the right client, we can, I'm sure, really help them. The other part is about like signing verifiable credentials. I think this works less for the current Web3 ecosystems. They're less focused on the SSI stuff and more focused on business flows. And I think this is where the non-Web3 use cases are more powerful. I don't think, for me, there's not like an answer of which one is better at the moment. I'm suspecting there are opportunities in both.
Oh, definitely. No, I think also in Web3 communities, people are more aware of the problem, and therefore the value proposition is more apparent to them. But
Yeah.
Also, of course, yeah, I think we will see, right? We just target both. But something else that I wanted to ask Jack is like this whole technical breakdown. Is there like a document or like some sort of manifesto where it's all written very clearly and demonstrated very clearly? Because I think that might help to kind of, if we have a lead, for example, and they are interested, but like they don't want to have a call, maybe they just want to like, I don't know, read about it or something, then it might be cool if they can like read a PDF file, right, where all of this is like with illustrations, very clear, very nicely.
There is a document. I wouldn't call it very clear at the moment.
Okay.
Well, yeah, this is a good call because we do have, for example, flyers and stuff like that, but maybe we're missing stuff from it still. I think we have all the information already, but maybe it's not compiled.
Mike's made the different pieces of information around. I know Mike has even made some stuff that explains like what happens at each step during login. I've made some stuff that explains the general tech and also some of these constraints what we're talking about. I think the right piece of information really depends on what journey you're at and which person you're talking to.
Yeah.
Like you said, in Web3, the education onboarding you need to go through to explain Tonomy ID is way lower than if you go and talk to somebody not in Web3, let alone somebody in government to try and sell this. It's a very different story than of what language you use and then what they already know. Very different.
It makes sense. Yeah, what I have in my head right now is like one of those YouTube videos, right? Like, which explains blockchain with all of these like graphics and stuff. That might be cool, you know, like a 5-minute video or something that we can have on our website.
I think Chris has been working on this to some degree.
To some degree, yeah. No, we have many of these. I mean,
yeah, but I don't need 50 different like pieces of information on different spots. Like, it should just have one proper one, you know.
Yeah, okay. I think we move on. I know if you have something specific, you should ask me or probably Chris. Chris has seen them all.
Nice. Okay, I will think about it. Maybe I will make one.
Let me go back to the agenda. There was a couple of things I wanted to go through. So we've talked about the Antelope compatibility now. So I think the summary of here is that the client needs to already have an Antelope chain or will have required to have an Antelope chain. And then not all Antelope chains are necessarily compatible with ours out of the box. So the EOS ID grant is a different, you can give a different story if you're talking to people wanting EOS, like a Tonomy ID on the EOS ecosystem, I think if they support our grant, right, and they can do that by they can basically support the pull request we make, which enhances our grant and gives it more support. Then they can essentially get EOS ID for free.
Yes, well, and if they need additional support, of course, money. But yes, it's for free.
So this brings me to my next point about the alternative business model that we can use on existing Antelope chains. It's quite interesting. So I explained to you that on Antelope, on EOS or Wax or Telos, they're all pretty similar. The token holders on that chain vote for who should be producing blocks. If I have 10 EOS, I give 10 votes to these 3 block producers, and then they're more likely to actually be in the top schedule. If you're in the top schedule, there is a payment scheme, and that payment scheme tells them how much EOS they get paid for being a block producer. Right now, the top block producer, I think on EOS, is getting about 25 or 35,000 euros a month in income, and that's supposed to subsidize their cost of running the infrastructure. But it's also supposed to incentivize them to be a genuine contributor to the EOS ecosystem. So basically, the way you get income on EOS is you can get people to vote for you with their accounts, and then by doing that, you can get an income for running infrastructure and supporting the ecosystem. Now, part of this proposal here is that we would deploy EOS ID for free and give people free accounts, and we would pay for their transactions. In exchange, we would be putting them in a payment plan in which they are required to vote for us as a block producer. So that means if you have an EOS ID account with our system and you're on our plan, you're going to be voting for the Tonomy block producer on the EOS blockchain network. If we start getting enough votes, we start getting an income that would subsidize our costs for running this on EOS. And it's a win-win. We can give everybody free accounts. We can give everybody a great user experience. We can service apps on the EOS blockchain. And we can potentially earn quite a bit of money from doing this. Do you guys understand this as a business model for EOS?
Yes, I get it. So I mean, it's like a popularity contest.
So people use our system, for that they vote for us, and for that we get money, basically.
By being the ones that control the wallet, and the wallet being the thing that gives them access to everything in EOS, it gives us a very strong position to ask them, or maybe not even ask them, require them to vote for us. If they're going to put all of their EOS tokens in our wallet, we can very easily vote for ourselves with our wallet, and they would need to opt into this in some way, of course, either by opening an EOS account or by clicking a button in the app to vote for us, and through this we get an income. If enough people vote for us, we would then be required, under the rules of the EOS blockchain, to actually run a production level block producer on that network. This doesn't have to be thought of in the beginning, but we would need to do something like this. And this is a big part of this proposal, is actually to offer a free account service on EOS, with this alternative business model to basically get people to vote for us from our wallet and therefore earn the income that you get from people voting for you.
Sounds great.
And
So
why this grant
this-
still hasn't been accepted?
I made it 3 weeks ago, and I think they're very busy at the foundation, and they haven't looked at it yet. It has been looked at. There's been some feedback, and I've gone to that. So now it's been approved to be assessed at this point. So now the next stage is that the grant committee reviews this. If the grant committee approves it, then there are 4 technical reviews that need approval, and then this grant would be approved. So this grant is not proposing to basically launch Tonomy ID on EOS. It's going further than that, though. It's proposing new features on Tonomy ID that we would also offer as part of this. So I think it's also worth having a read of this grant to understand that, especially if we're going to talk to EOS applications about integrating with Tonomy ID.
And the new features would include that people can basically store tokens within Tonomy ID.
No, that's not the new features. The new features are let me see. The new features are about so this is all the stuff we already do. The features that we're really offering to EOS is free accounts. Like I said, this is not a feature of Tonomy ID, but would be if we had to deploy. It's about rapid onboarding and basically having a formless login. So whenever you log into an EOS app, it fills in automatically from Tonomy ID your account name and your personal information automatically as you sign in. This is addressing a major problem that they have in EOS, which is onboarding friction. Hello? Did I just drop out? Or did somebody else just drop out?
Chris.
Okay.
Yes, can you repeat?
Yeah,
So-
that's
so
why,
the
Chris,
main-
yeah, better not to drive, right?
The main value proposition of this proposal is addressing a pain point in the EOS ecosystem, which is onboarding friction of users onto their applications and how easy it is to create an EOS account and then use EOS applications to addressing those issues.
Yes.
Okay. So hopefully this is understood. I wanted to then share this resource. It's in Notion. I'm going to copy this into the notes here. Right, so this is a page with mapped out the Antelope ecosystem. Okay. I'm not going to go over all of this. It kind of goes over the main actors. There's a few pretty useful resources here. So there's a LinkedIn group, which has a whole list of people that are or have been involved in Antelope. There's a list of Twitter followers. Again, all these people are or have been quite involved in Antelope. Same as this. These are great people, I think, to target and to talk to about integrating Tonomy ID in their system. There's also kind of a list of the main entities here. There's a bit of a history of what's happened in Antelope because it hasn't been a straightforward launch a blockchain and then everybody comes. So I've been mentioning these 2 chains as well. There's EOS, Telos, and Wax are the main 3 networks. There are actually a whole bunch of public chains. So there's a list you could find of other chains here that we could also target. So these are all different Antelope blockchains. Some of these are still running, some of them not. There are other more actively maintained lists you could look at here. Again, you could find a name like Wax or EOS, and then you could basically figure out who's running this blockchain and go and talk to them. So that's kind of the main resource here. I think this is quite useful for you guys. It gives you guys targets in this particular Antelope space. And it's also important to note, like I said, each Antelope chain is different. So our compatibility with each is different. And if we get some people interested in Tonomy ID for their chain, then we would need to assess exactly what compatibility issues we need to resolve. Luckily, the EOS blockchain, Wax, and Telos have a very similar resource model. So if we're compatible with one of these 3, we're probably compatible with all 3 of them. Not necessarily fully, but mostly. The tweaks we would need for each chain would be minor compared to right now. They're not major right now, but they are. There's something to do to be able to launch on each of these. Is this making sense for you guys?
Yes, it does make sense. This good information. Yeah. Are you getting it, Samin?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay.
That's
Sorry, say again, Chris?
That's for Web 3.0. Did you want to talk about the general features as well, or not?
What are you referring to?
So this is only regarding to the limitations within addressing to connect to Web 3.0 ecosystems, right?
So the constraints really exist when we're talking about Web3 with people who already have blockchains.
Yes,
They already have
exactly.
a blockchain. If it's not Antelope, it's not a good target. If it is Antelope, it's a pretty good target, but we still have potential integrations to do, depending on that Antelope chain. If they
Yes,
don't, if they are Web3 and they don't currently have a blockchain yet, that could be a good target.
It doesn't matter if we need to do some integration work, if we can offer them, like, we're gonna build this idea, it's gonna work like this, and all you need to do is vote for us. That's it. That's a great proposition.
That only applies to EOS. Only the EOS blockchain applies to at the moment.
Right, which is the only one in the Web3 community that we can target at all. So, okay. Did you want to talk more about the, or not? That's also possible. About the limitations and features for Web 2.0?
Yeah, they're way
Or
less
maybe not
severe.
right now. That's possible.
Just spell this out. And then so basically, these are the kind of 3 constraint categories. They have a blockchain, but it's not Antelope. It's not a very good target. Sorry, there's 4 categories. They have a blockchain, but it is Antelope. It is a good target, but we made an integration. They have a blockchain already, and it's the EOS. It's a good target, and they should vote for our proposal. And then if they don't have a blockchain yet, either they're in Web3 or Web2, then it's a good target. There's no constraints. So this is what applies to Web 2. Web 2 is
Okay.
kind of good because they're not running a blockchain. They don't have a technical constraint we need to work with. So in terms of technical constraints, Web 2 doesn't generally, generally they won't have a technical constraint on the blockchain part. They might have technical constraints on integrating with their legacy identity system. That is a different story then altogether. So this would be a good question to ask them. What identity system are they already using?
Right. That's a good opener.
For me, what in my head is still a bit unclear. Like, I completely get the value proposition that is a technical value proposition, and that for the end user it's very valuable, right? Because they can log into systems without sharing the data. But for the company itself, what is really the benefit for them? Because they might not care if their users share the data or not. So how
So
can we
there's
really
two
address that?
different value propositions. If you're talking about Web3, the main value proposition is that we're making Web3 more usable. So we have more of a usability value proposition. We generally apply the security standards that are expected in Web3, but we do it in a usable way. And then for Web 2 companies, the value proposition for the company or for the ecosystem operators is more of a cybersecurity, risk management, and compliance. So we have a much better security stack. That means they're going to have less hacks and less consequences when there are hacks.
All right.
Right, Chris?
Thank you.
Correct. You have productivity increases and cost reduction, right? Which comes with integration and stuff like that. Yes. So for the Web 3.0, it's usability, and for the 2.0, it's ease of use and security by default.
I'm not so sure if I understand the ease of use, because, for example, if I use Google login, right, that's super easy. Like, I would say
Yeah,
Tonomy
that's the same.
ID is less easy to use, right? But it's more
Mm,
secure. So I think the cybersecurity is more.
There is part of the solution. So the verifiable credentials, that means sharing data between different applications becomes easier, and therefore you can integrate them together easier. It's pretty indirect. In my opinion, it won't be an easy value proposition to convey, but it is indeed part of the value proposition to operators. I think this is what Chris is getting at, that you can link together applications easier, and that makes technical processes easier to use. Right,
not just
Chris?
technical. Yes, not just technical processes. I'm
Not just
talking more,
Yeah.
for example, approval processes or anything that there's multiple parties that need to agree on something. It could be as simple as delivering a package and making sure that everybody gets paid. And for right now, it's mostly about repeated logins. Those are the same advantages as Google SSO, of course. the advantage is really there as well for Web 2.0 companies. Is if you connect Google SSO, then Google owns everything there. So massive security risk. So you're risking compliance problems and stuff like that. But even if you don't care about all of that, there's a lot of programs that Google won't work with or won't share information with, and it's very difficult internally to transfer information from one system to another using only Google SSO, because it's not custom built for that application, if you get what I mean. So if I want to move employee from one system to another, that's very difficult in traditional systems. With this, it's just a click. You get what I mean? Or a medical record, or rating, or a ticket from a movie event.
So I think there are constraints in both sides, right? The Web3 constraints are kind of outlined here. The Web2 constraints, it's not a constraint, but it's a challenge. If you look at us versus Google login, Google single sign-on, there's one Google login service. You can log into everything with one Google account. That's not what we're offering. We're not offering an identity service. We're offering an infrastructure service. So we would go into a particular ecosystem and allow them to deploy an identity service. So we might allow Tesla to make Tesla ID, and then all of the Tesla employees can use it. But somebody who wants to log into Netflix can't use their Tesla account. This is different to Google, where you can maybe use your Google account to log in everywhere. There's one Google identity service. This is going to be a disadvantage when it comes to us compared to single sign-on service providers like Google. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest constraints we have compared to those. There is no one identity service we provide. We provide an infrastructure service that allows them to create one identity service.
Okay. Thanks
That make
for
sense?
yeah. Thanks. Guys, I think we have stand up now. But thanks for this, Jack. It was really insightful. And
Yes, yeah, that's good.
I wouldn't mind continuing a little bit more. There's a few small points I'd just like to go over. Let's go up to stand up. It won't take long.
Okay,
See you there.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye. I just wanted to mention, so once we have deployed Tonomy ID in an ecosystem, so suppose we do deploy EOS ID, once an application wants to integrate with us, the technical time for them to do that should be pretty small. You know, if you know what you're doing, it's going to take, I don't know, less than half an hour, I'd say, for a developer to read our docs and get it done. Now, maybe they're going to make mistakes and it's going to take longer, but if they follow the docs correctly and we've written the docs correctly, it should take less than half an hour, probably even less. It also depends on their kind of testing infrastructure, how quickly they can test it, but in theory, it should be pretty quick to have that integration work done. The work to deploy Tonomy ID into an ecosystem, that takes a lot longer. The work to integrate it once it's already there is very small. Make sense?
Wait, once you said to integrate it fully, it's a lot more work. What do you mean? we attach Tonomy ID to their network, and then it takes 30 minutes. And now suddenly you're saying there's a lot more work to be done. I don't get it.
Yeah, what I was talking about before is if we want to deploy Tonomy ID into an ecosystem, and we might
Yeah.
need to integrate with existing legacy identity systems or make sure it's compatible with their Antelope blockchain. That's the
Right.
work required for us to provide the infrastructure service to them, our client.
Yeah. Okay. If there's
Right.
if they're not using the specific version, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Even if we don't have to integrate, there's still quite a few things we need to do to set up a deployment. But there are probably, well, in some cases, there'll also be integration works to do to fix compatibility or interface with legacy identity. That's like a big piece of work. What I'm talking about now is Tonomy ID is already deployed somewhere and running. So Tonomy ID is on the Play Store and the Apple Store. Users of who our client can download and use, Tonomy ID. What I'm talking about is now apps in that ecosystem want to use Tonomy ID. So suppose we get Netflix as a client, Netflix goes and deploys Netflix ID. Our work to get Netflix ID up and running is not small, right? That's why it costs so much. Now Netflix wants to make it so that you can use Netflix ID to sign into Netflix.com. That piece of work is quite small, generally.
Right.
So the work required by us to set up and deploy Tonomy ID in an ecosystem is a bigger piece of work. I mean, it's open source. Somebody else can also try and do this. For them, that's also a bigger piece of work. Then once it's set up, once you have Netflix ID, integrating it with Netflix.com, so you can use Netflix ID to sign into Netflix.com, the web app, that's an easy piece of work.
Right. And of course, step one depends on how big the ecosystem is and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, there can also be challenges with that integration. Generally, they would be less than that first piece of work and challenges there.
Right. Right. What we need to focus on for us in the BD team is to say the things that we can do instead of saying the things that we can't do. Yeah, there are always limitations. I think these are acceptable limitations, to be very honest.
Sure. My point was to differentiate the two kind of steps. One is setting up Tonomy ID and having that ready, and the second is allowing Tonomy ID to log into apps with it. And they're very two different amounts of work. That's my point here, and I just want you guys to understand that.
Right.
The first is harder, the second is quite easy.
Okay.
So if you go and speak to EOS apps, for them, integrating with EOS ID, if we have it, is quite easy. For us, deploying EOS on the EOS ecosystem is quite hard. Right. The last thing was I wanted to let you guys know that I originally purchased a domain called tonomy.io. This is available. Sorry, Mike has a question.
Yeah, we are just have discussed only one aspect of our integration with the bigger ecosystems, right? So let's say we talk to EOS, Wax, and Telus. The three of them all say no. What's the next goal? And I think there is no too much work to do there, right? So basically, I thought we can discuss who we can target, except of those EOS people.
I gave these guys a list of targets they can make. If none of EOS, Wax, and I know that we solve problems in EOS, Wax, and Telus. The question is, can we convince them to pay us to deploy there with our price point? I think is more the question in my mind.
Can we do it even for free? So let's say the conversation goes on and they say, so we don't want to spend money, and can we give them it for free?
Probably. Yes.
I think that
Because
might be hard.
it's a huge business case.
It is a huge business case, and it could still be worth the risk. It's something I've thought of.
Well, they of course pay for their
Giving it for
infrastructure.
free. Yeah, giving it for free is always the offer. To be very honest, they said if they need additional support to run it, yeah, then they're going to need us for it. But if they can do it themselves, they can. It is free. That's the whole thing. The whole point.
They won't go and do it themselves, though. That's
Yes, exactly.
like
So
if
they'll need
if
us.
somebody's going to run it on EOS, it's going to be us, and I'm trying to get us paid for that brand, but I'm not sure if they're going to go for it.
I think what makes sense in this kind of stage is at first offer it for free, right? Let's say for the next 6 months we're gonna do this for free, set it up. But then once we like set a contract that if in 6 months there's value for you and it proves to be working very well, then we want to get paid, right? So I think it's
Well,
good.
the thing is, with EOS, I was explaining there's an indirect business model. By running EOS ID, we can solicit and obtain votes of EOS for us as a block producer and get get a income from that anyway. We don't even need to interface with the EOS Network Foundation necessarily.
No, for sure. I was just more talking in general. Like for example, at the platform, my company, the first year we just did everything for free, kind of, and that kind of gave us this brand awareness and recognizability that now people are asking us and they're paying us and they're like, okay, we want you and we pay you 3,000 euros to host a night. But it like took the first year of just doing this for free to kind of set the brand right and become recognizable and prove our worth. So
Yeah.
that's just I think a good way to approach business in initial startup phases. Just my remark on this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
really
agree
agree
here.
with this. We also have a pricing point. I also think it's worth, if it makes sense to you guys, offer discounts, even heavy discounts on those price points. It's good for them to see that it does cost us quite a bit, but we can say, oh, because you're our first client, we'll give you an 80% discount or something. Even that 200 euros a month shows more commercial value than giving it for free, and they feel like a good deal, 80% discount. Could be another thing we consider along the same lines, Samin.
I agree. Yeah, that's always really nice if you make them feel special. Yeah.
So yeah, I think you guys should definitely have discounts on mind when talking to clients. Our price points are great to have there as transparent, and they're kind of our go-to price points if we're talking to anybody in general. But if somebody really aligns with us and we think they're a great match, or we just, think they will pay us long term if we can just prove this initial bid, for sure give them a discount. And we can even go as far as giving it to free if we really think it can work and they can rely on us.
But the question though is, let's say your list, Jack, wouldn't work. Let's say we fail in 1.5 months to find any client. So what's our next goal?
I don't know, and I don't have the answer for that in this meeting. I just wanted to share the technical constraints.
I think in Web 2, where it makes sense to target people is companies that have recently been hacked, because then they kind of are aware of the problem, right? And so they have the pain point, and then we can upsell on that. So maybe we can like someone can do some research, or even I can do it if I have time, to like look at companies, small companies maybe that have been hacked, and then we can be like, hey, we saw this cost you this and this damage. We can solve this for you for so much cheaper. So if it happens, so it won't happen again. So you have that, like, yeah.
I think this is a really good target. I think the other target, because Chris and I already had this conversation about targets, another one was looking into companies that are already using Google alternatives because of the privacy reasons. So for example, this is a Google Analytics alternative, and people are using this for the same reasons, for security and privacy benefits. So these, whoever the clients of this company are potentially very good clients for us as well. And they have a bit of a list of them. I'm not sure how else we could find their clients. This could be another good way to find those Web2 clients.
By the way, Zoom now has its own login system, SSO.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring a last thing to your attention. I purchased this domain, Tonomy.io, when I purchased Tonomy.foundation. The idea was that if we ever created an LLC or had like a commercial branch, we could use this domain for our like product website. And it'll be less about. So this is more or less what you're doing, and I'll let you guys know that we have this domain for it if you want. I see you're using Tonomy.nl, which is cool, but it doesn't give the global digital product sense. It gives, you know, a very Dutch sense. And IO is really a domain set up for digital products. So if you guys think it's a good idea, we could set this up for your website.
Yeah,
I agree.
no problem.
Want to do that?
Yeah, they do that. It's all routed through Cloudflare right now, so it's just a matter of changing DNS.
Okay, I will have a look where that is, and you need to tell me where it needs to go. Does it just need to go in Cloudflare, perhaps?
Yeah, it can. Yeah.
And then from there, you guys can do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, the only reason why I went this route is because I don't have access to our Cloudflare anymore.
Okay, I will put it into Cloudflare.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Last thing was, I guess there's a lot of technical things behind this product, right? It's a very technical product. I just want to say, if you guys don't know something in a conversation with clients, it's definitely okay to say, I don't know this fully, but I can clarify with our tech team. It's always okay to say in a sales conversation. Instead of saying something that's wrong, it's much better to say this, and you can come and ask me.
Yeah, for sure. I think also in a product of this domain, it makes sense to maybe have an initial call with me or Chris, right, to just set the foundation. But then if they're actually interested, have a call with you involved, Jack, with Mike involved maybe, and like show them that there's a bunch of people working on this and that, you know, we're like professional and not just like two dudes trying to sell them something. So I think
for sure, it'd be handy if before we got to the point where I got involved, you had some kind of check of some of the stuff we've discussed. That would be very useful. Like these big compatibility checks we want to make, right? Maybe they're running Ethereum, then just don't send them to me. Like we just can't do it at this point, for example. Yeah. No point us discussing further.
No, for sure. That is very clear. Thanks for making that also clear.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, the last thing, I mean, Rebel is bringing some great stuff up in our last meeting, Chris. Hopefully tomorrow we can have a bit more of a discussion about the feedback you're getting from the conversations you're having. Sound good?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Awesome. And I've sent this link in Discord, okay? So you can see the grant proposal, you can see this resource list for the Antelope ecosystem, stuff like that. It's all there. And the constraints are all written down.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you, Jack, for taking the time, and thank you, Mike, for
Fellas.
attending and your good thoughts.
Yeah, fellas.
Very
Again,
good
so
stuff.
we during the strategy meeting we said we would discuss like a contingency plan for the business development team as well. So, but now we kind of say, hey, we don't know, and we moved on. But I still want us, maybe not now, but think about the contingency plan and let's say the time when we abandon an idea to use Tonomy ID as we are trying now, and think about the way how we can integrate it maybe with the Tonomy participant, maybe with other products or something like this, like
Okay, yeah,
several
sure.
options to pivot.
Yes, I know. All right.
Because and like how much time do we have until this point? So is it July, August, September?
Well, right now, Tonomy ID is deployable. I've got all of the tasks ready for it, so we can make a deployment of it for a client. So it is ready this week for something we can give to clients.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it 100% finished, but it's definitely something they can get their hand into. And by the time they've done all of that, it'll be ready. So as soon as you guys give the trigger, I'm going to move all of those tasks into our product backlog and tell the team to get onto it. Until then, it's just going to sit in the icebox waiting for that point. If we don't have somebody that's going to use it immediately, I don't really want to take the team away from finishing the other things. But as soon as you guys say there is somebody that is willing to integrate, then we've planned it all out already, okay?
Okay, but the question was, do you understand my question, Jack?
I think, Mike, what you want to say is that at what point does it make sense to continue trying to sell this if no one is interested, right? So like set a deadline, and if until that deadline no one shows interest, then we pivot and try to sell something else.
Well, I think we just keep working in an agile way. We need to make sure there's a proper feedback line that we can keep shaping our sprint priorities based on that. And I think in like 6 months, if we still can't sell it based on pivoting several times in an agile way, then maybe we'd give up. But we should be able to keep modifying this to make it work for different requirements along the way in an agile way.
I agree.
Okay. Then if there's nothing else to discuss, thank you for that last point. But if there's nothing else to discuss, we have a lot of work to do.